We have so many injuries and split backfields in the running back position. It's really easy to quit at this point, but do not quit because this is when fantasy football becomes the most interesting. So we're going through the top 30 running back rankings for Week 7 fantasy football, and I'm doing everything I can to get us ready for Week 7. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now get into our first tier. Very obvious here, Jonathan Taylor at 1, Bijan Robinson at 2. You can flip-flop these two guys in particular, I would say, because both of them are having very special seasons, and it doesn't really matter what the matchup brings. Indianapolis' offense, for example, is just running so efficiently right now that you know Jonathan Taylor is going to continue to produce against anybody, and with Bijan Robinson, they use him in so many different ways because the offense runs through him. So it doesn't matter if it's San Francisco, Carolina, Seattle, Denver. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. They'll find ways to get this guy the ball. And then Christian McCaffrey also at 3 in this tier as well. And again, you can reorder these rankings however you particularly feel like it. These are the unquestioned top 3 backs to me. Christian McCaffrey, the only difference and the only reason I wouldn't rank him above either of these guys is because he's just not as efficient on the ground this year. I mean, if you look at the efficiency numbers, he's averaging like less than 4 yards per carry still. It hasn't been tremendous. Against the Atlanta Falcons defense, I do think it's a matchup that's fine, and he could theoretically take over and become more efficient on the ground, but that offensive line is not very good, even without the injuries, and the more injuries they pile up, it's going to become more difficult for Christian McCaffrey to be much more efficient than he is right now, which isn't the problem because he's been so good in the passing game still that he's still a top 3 guy. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs at 4 and Josh Jacobs at 5. So with Jahmyr Gibbs versus Tampa, listen, there's a couple reasons I'm going to end up still playing him over Josh Jacobs, who I love a lot. And most of you who know that were here with me in the offseason, you understand that I'm a big Josh Jacobs guy. I had him ranked well above consensus because everybody else was stupid about it. Jahmyr Gibbs, listen, my thing with him is that this offense is just so dominant and they're so efficient on the ground that it's like in any given week, Jahmyr Gibbs can have a massive breakout game. Now, he hasn't done it this year yet, and that is a little concerning. But I think the Tampa Bay Bucks matchup is still a really good one, and there's going to be points flowing in this game. So I want options in on this matchup, and it's really as simple as that. Whereas with Josh Jacobs at the Arizona Cardinals, you know, I can split hairs on this one because that's why I prefer Josh Jacobs under Jahmyr Gibbs in my rankings, because I still do trust Green Bay's offense less than I trust Detroit's. Now, Josh Jacobs, the offense runs through him as well. He's been fantastic. He's a workhorse on a really good offense. So he's not going to find himself much lower than this on any given week. But Josh Jacobs still is in this position to where I still want to take the upside with Jahmyr Gibbs. But again, everybody who knows me very well knows that I love Josh Jacobs, so this is not a slight to Josh Jacobs. And then Devon Achane at 6 and Cam Skattebo at 7. So with Devon Achane at the Cleveland Browns, the matchup in theory is not ideal, but it's not the worst either because in theory, Cleveland's offense won't be able to move the ball very much to the point where Devon Achane and the Miami Dolphins could just run the clock out with Devon Achane. But really, Devon Achane's upside comes from the explosive plays and the upside that he gets through the passing game. And everybody understands this. It's always on the table with Devon Achane. What he did last week, which was take a 50-yard house call. That's always on the table, and that's why Devon Achane, realistically, I shouldn't have moved him down last week, and he shouldn't be much lower than this area because the upside in the big playability is 100% there. Cam Skattebo at 7 at the Denver Broncos is in this weird spot where it's like, it doesn't make sense. Like the math doesn't math on him having a good game against the Denver Broncos. But I got to tell you, I've said this a lot. Hope and confidence is so big for an NFL team, especially a young team with young stars. And that's what the Giants have. The Giants are led by Cam Skattebo and Jackson Dart. But realistically, Cam Skattebo's energy and his confidence is what fuels this team forward. So I think Cam Skattebo at Denver this week is just in this position to where I'm going to ignore matchup a little bit and just say to you guys, He is such a high confidence, high level player. My wife called him the Gronk at running back, and it's such a good example of how he really is because that whole team just feeds off of it. So I'm going to ignore the matchup at Denver, which is really tough, and just rank Cam Scatterbo at number 7. And Javonte Williams at 8 to round this tier. It wasn't ideal and kind of reminded you and gave you some flashbacks of like how Javonte Williams has always been throughout the majority of his career. I understand that, but it's still a matchup I want in on. Washington and Dallas, that's going to be a high-scoring one. And Javonte Williams, realistically, has just proven too much through the majority of the first 6 weeks to the point where I'm not going to consider benching the guy. And I still view him as a low-end running back 1, high-end running back 2. But in the offense he's on and against the Washington Commanders, which is a great matchup, I want in on Javonte Williams this week. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Quinshon Judkins at number 9 and Kyren Williams is at number 10. So with Quinshon Judkins, I said this on Monday night, what I got right and what I got wrong. My problem with Judkins now moving forward is that if you watched Dillon Gabriel play this year, the guy is atrocious. He's a shrimp. He can't see over his offensive line over the middle of the field. He throws hospital balls, and he's not a good decision maker, and he has bad feel for the pocket. There's like nothing good I can say about the guy except that he's tough. That's the only thing I can really say about Dillon Gabriel because he took a lot of hits. The problem I'm having now with Quinshon Judkins is any logical defense is going to stack the box against Judkins and make Dillon Gabriel beat them. So that's what I struggle with. But at the same time, Miami is in shambles right now. So it's kind of this unique window this week where I still think Judkins could be a top 10 play because Judkins has done very well in every game except the Pittsburgh Steelers as a starter this year. And Miami's defense is already not good, and their coaching staff is on the fritz. So I do think it's a unique week he could take advantage of again. But I will say this is a fluid ranking. Quinshon Judkins being in the top 10, I don't know if that's going to happen for many more weeks. Kyren Williams at 10, though. At Jacksonville, it's the overseas game, and I don't like these overseas games. I've been saying this all week. You've got to bump down players in overseas games because realistically, I would have Kyren Williams over Javonte, over Quinshon Judkins, possibly over Cam Scatterbo if I knew that this game was in Los Angeles or even Jacksonville, for example. But these teams that go overseas, they're flat, they're inconsistent, they look out of sorts in these overseas games offensively because it makes sense. New time zone, new field conditions, everything's different. Their routines are screwed up. So I worry about this Los Angeles Rams offense, but I will say if Puka Nacua plays, he's going to be less than 100%. And if he doesn't play, it changes the dynamic in totality. So I would say Kyren Williams probably gets more pass catching upside this week. And that's the reason I play him over Rashad White, but I still like Rashad White a lot. And Rashad White, of course, we're another week without Bucky Irving, so he's going to be fine. At Detroit this week, the matchup is fantastic because Detroit's defense, when everyone's healthy, very good defense. But they're looking like last year. They're getting decimated on the defensive side of the ball with injuries. And that's a problem, man, because this defense is not looking good right now. And Tampa is moving the ball so well because Baker Mayfield's playing out of his mind. So Rashad White is just on an offense, and it really is a byproduct to this ranking of this offense in Tampa and how well it's running. But this is a really interesting poll to post. I'm going to go on FS Roundup right now, post Kyren Williams versus Rashad White. So I'm going to look up Kyren Williams, then go to chat, then go to post a poll for week 7 and add Rashad White. And I'm going to post this, and I want you to go vote on this because it's entirely free to vote on this poll to let me know what you are thinking and what the community thinks about this one. And it's also entirely free to start your own start-sit poll. But if you want access to my weekly top 250 rankings, that's a part of the premium subscription at fsroundup.com. Not only does it support the channel and what I'm doing over here, it supports what we're doing in a massive way, and it's going to give you tons of value because you also get the automatic waiver wire tool, the opportunity for a team breakdown from me, and several other massive features.
Ted desperately needs to pick up a new running back, or his fantasy team is toast. And losing his season again means one thing. Oh, no. Don't be Ted. Automate your waiver pickups with Fantasy Football Roundup.
Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Ashton Jeanty at 12 and J.K. Dobbins at 13. So with Ashton Jeanty, he's playing the Kansas City Chiefs this week in Kansas City, and I think they're going to get absolutely freaking walloped. Like, they're going to get curb stomped. Their teeth are going to get kicked in. But the realistic fact with Ashton Jeanty that keeps me on the wheel with him is that he gets the pass catching work. He is such a workhorse for this team, and they can't afford to not use him because their wide receiver room, it's in shambles right now. And especially without Brock Bowers, they need Ashton Jeanty more than ever. So Ashton Jeanty, I realistically can't see putting guys like J.K. Dobbins above him because J.K. Dobbins is always in this weird spot where I've always said this, Denver and Sean Payton runs that team like the mob. He doesn't tell anybody anything about what he's thinking on a weekly basis from a game plan perspective. And so this week against the Giants, again, the confidence and the momentum with the Giants is real right now. So I don't put it past the Giants to beat the Broncos in this game. But either way, I think J.K. Dobbins and the Denver offense looks better than they did last week. So that's why I've got him at 13. Jordan Mason's at 14 and Saquon's at 15. Now with Jordan Mason, he's taking on the Eagles and Saquon is taking on the Vikings. And I'm going to play Jordan Mason this week over Saquon. Sorry, but I said it last week after that game. This offense looks so out of sorts right now. And it's bizarre because obviously they've got the talent. And Saquon is a better back from talent perspective than Jordan Mason is. But Jordan Mason has not been bad. And Aaron Jones, it doesn't look like he's returning again. So he's going to continue to get 15 to 20 plus opportunities on a weekly basis without him. And he's been really good. He's almost averaging 5 yards per carry on the year. And Philly's defense also dealing with injuries, and they look out of sorts as well. So I'm going to take Jordan Mason over Saquon this week, who, again, it just doesn't add up. Like, this offensive coordinator looks bad. He looks like he could get fired at some point. I don't know what to think about this Saquon Barkley and Philadelphia Eagles offense as a whole, but I'll tell you this, like, I'm moved away from them because I don't trust them and their offensive coordinator calling plays. Last week, for example, the Giants were not able to stop Saquon for the first 2-3 drives of this game, and they moved off him while they were still in the game. It made no sense. So, like, I don't get this offense, but I've got to put him inside the top 15 still because we know that he could break out for a massive game at any point. And then DeAndre Swift moves up to 16 to round out this tier versus New Orleans. So there's a couple different factors to this one. So he has a breakout game, right? And it looked really good. Against the Washington Commanders, DeAndre Swift was an electric player. He looked like what we kind of always wanted him to be, which was this elite pass-catching back who's really efficient running the ball as well. The other reason I'm putting him here, though, is because before the bye week, I saw comments because I like to watch press conferences with coaches because you can gain a lot of knowledge in certain situations. So one of the things that Ben Johnson was asked about was the running game, and he said he took it personally, that their running game wasn't adding up to a really good running attack like he had in Detroit. Then he comes out and does this. There's an emphasis here in Chicago with this run game, and they look really good offensively. I think they're still prone to having bad drives and making mistakes, but I will say DeAndre Swift versus New Orleans, the matchup is fantastic. I'm going to bank on another good week. Dropping down to our next tier, I've got Bill Krosky at 17 and Rico Dowdle at 18. Now, there's a couple things to talk about with both of these guys. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, yes, he handled the majority of the workload. Jeremy McNichols will still be involved as a pass-catching back, but it's not enough to really take away from what Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt is doing on a weekly basis at this point. The matchup is also great. So you might ask me, well, why is he not higher against the Dallas Cowboys defense? I'm going to tell you something really worried me, which is that he fumbled once. And I get it. The second fumble was Jaden Daniels' fault primarily, but he did technically almost fumble twice. So Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, I worry about this in the sense of like, okay, we've got a defensive head coach here who might not like the turnover aspect with Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Is there a chance that Chris Rodriguez worms his way back into the lineup a little bit? I worry about it. So I'm not going to rank him too high, even though the matchup is fantastic and I want to take advantage of it, but I will still rank him at 17 because I do still think he probably leads the backfield. Rico Dowdle at 18. I'm factoring in Chuba Hubbard playing, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of things that are going through my head. So at the New York Jets, the matchup is not the problem. The problem is entirely, what is this team going to do at the running back position? I have no clue. I've walked through a couple things. So on one hand, Chuba Hubbard, they gave him like $30-40 million this previous offseason because he was coming off a really good year. This year, he hasn't been great, but he has not been bad. So he missed a couple weeks. Rico Dowdle kicks the door open for opportunity and has 200-plus scrimmage yards for 2 weeks straight. You can't ignore that either. So Rico Dowdle, I think if Chuba is back, is probably going to take the lion's share of the workload, but I think it's going to be split. And that's why Rico's not higher. Because I think Chuba, you can't overlook the contract and what they gave this guy, and the fact he has not been bad. But you also can't overlook how good Rico Dowdle has been. So it's a tough spot to be in, but I've got him here at 18 right now because I think it's going to be split. Travis Etienne's at 19, and Kamani Vidal is at 20. So with Travis Etienne, again, it's this overseas game. I don't like this matchup. I think the Rams' front seven is really tough. And Etienne's had a bad stretch. I mean, he's not looking good once again. He's just a really inconsistent player, and he's kind of always been that. And when you factor in this matchup overseas, it's not something I love already. So if you give Bashul Tuten a couple more opportunities, it's just going to lower the ceiling overall for Travis Etienne because he's not looking good all of a sudden because he's just an inconsistent player. And then Kamani Vidal at 20 versus the Indianapolis Colts, it's very clear that this guy led the backfield. So whoever reported this, I think it was Schefter, he reported before the game that Hassan Haskins was going to be the guy. Well, obviously we know he's full of crap because this was clearly Kamani Vidal's backfield. And I will say, I don't think there's a reason to not give him the opportunities. He did really well on his work. Hassan Haskins has always been more of a pass blocking back. So I think Kamani Vidal leads the backfield once again versus the Colts, and if he does, then I want in on him at some level because it's a good offense with the Los Angeles Chargers and Justin Herbert at quarterback. David Montgomery's at 21, and Breece Hall's at 22 to round out this tier. Now, I got David Montgomery over Breece Hall for one simple reason, and that's the fact that the Jets are circling the toilet right now. Their coach might get fired, and Breece Hall in this offense is one less piece, and it's the most important piece of the offense, Garrett Wilson. So the box will be stacked. And it's Carolina's defense. I get it. Breece Hall is a great player, and he's handling the workload. But I'm going to take Montgomery in this matchup where it's, again, going to be a lot of points for both teams versus Tampa's defense. It's a good matchup, and I like the offensive upside. Even though the workload is always limited, I'm going to have him ranked inside the top 25. But Breece Hall, again, if the matchup was – the matchup's not the problem. If this was a better team, any other team, Breece Hall would be much higher than this. But this offense and this team as a whole is just incompetent. They are just brain dead as far as making decisions. And Breece Hall is just in a bad situation, especially this week without Garrett Wilson. So I want to say there's upside there. And I think there is to an extent because he's a great player and he's efficient. But I can't go too overboard on this one. Dropping down to our next tier, Kenneth Walker at 23 and Jaylen Warren at 24. So with Kenneth Walker, he takes on the Houston Texans in Seattle on Monday night. And I think there's a lot of room for this one to be a solid play. Not because Houston's defense isn't good. It is very good. But Kenneth Walker, again, the reason I'm going to continue to have him ranked over Zach Charbonnet is because he's the better player. Like, he's just the more athletic back. And I get it. The workload is always going to be split. It's just how this offense is rolling right now, and they're having a lot of success doing it, so there's no reason to change anything. But I'm going to have him over Jaylen Warren this week because I've been saying this for all week now. I think the Steelers actually are going to lose. Like, I think the Steelers are going to lose this one. Mike Tomlin's record on Thursday nights is bad. They come out flat, uninspired. They look bad offensively over the years with him. So I don't think this year's any different. So I do think Jaylen Warren is still someone I've got to play over Chase Brown, for example, because Jaylen Warren has just been the better back as a whole in this offense this year. Now, with Chase Brown, he's taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers again. I think the Bengals are actually going to come out looking pretty decent. Like, I think the Bengals could come out and play a really good offensive performance against the Steelers defense. And it goes against all logic, but logically, if you look at Thursday night games and defenses and how they played, it's not a defense that I think is going to do well. Defenses on Thursday night this year, not been good. So I think Chase Brown has probably the best opportunity since Joe Burrow went down for him to do really well on the ground. And that's why I've got him at 25 this week. Alvin Kamara is at 26, and Chuba Hubbard is at 27. With Alvin Kamara, there's no arguing this. This is a bad situation. He is not getting the pass-catching upside. The rushing upside is going away with Kendre Miller's involvement. It's not a great scenario here for him. So I do not love him in this spot this week against the Chicago Bears. It's in Chicago. This offense is already limited, and the upside is just not that high when you're taking away pass catching work and you're also taking away the ground game as well. His ceiling is capped. It's very unfortunate because it should be higher, but it's not, and that's not the reality. And Chuba Hubbard at 27. Again, covered most of it with Rico, but I'll reiterate this. I think Chuba gets work because they gave him too much money to put him on the bench, and he's not been bad. The guy has not played bad this year. He just hasn't been nearly as good as Rico Dowdle. So there's just no question to me. They can't ignore Rico Dowdle at this point, but they also can't ignore the contract and that money that they gave Chuba Hubbard. It's there, and it's a problem for Rico Dowdle because I think he'll be a thorn in Rico Dowdle's side, not the other way around. So Chuba Hubbard still sticks in the top 30 because you never know with this matchup against the Jets, and you never know what they're going to do. And dropping down to our last tier, I've got Ramondre Stevenson at 28 and Zach Charbonnet still in the top 30. So Ramondre Stevenson at Tennessee, I think it's just a scenario where they're going to beat the brakes off the Titans because they fired their coach this week. It's not going to change anything for the better. This team is still going to get clobbered by the New England Patriots because it's a revenge game for Mike Vrabel. They're going to get clobbered, and I just think that you want an option, especially at the running back position. Who's still leading the backfield? It's not Travion Henderson because Travion just hasn't been good enough on a per-opportunity basis, and they're not giving him the ball enough. So Ramondre is still going to stick inside the top 30 in this matchup against Tennessee. And then Zach Charbonnet versus Houston. Again, it's just hard because it's like the opportunities are split. Charbonnet has clearly not been the better back, but he's also getting the short yardage opportunities and the goal line work as well. So he gets in the end zone, he's a decent play. And that's really the fact of why he's here in the top 30 over other guys like Nick Chubb, like Tony Pollard, like Isaiah Pacheco. I'd rather play Zach Charbonnet in the opportunity with the touchdowns because I think it's a higher percentage chance it happens with Zach Charbonnet than it is with those other guys. And then Michael Carter's at 30 to round us out. I would play him over Bam Knight, but that's a great poll to post on fsroundup.com. If you look at the workload, Michael Carter actually had pass-catching opportunities in this one. So he's not going away. Versus Green Bay, it's not a great matchup for either of those guys. But Bam Knight, I will give you a hint. He's at 31. They're right back and back, neck and neck with each other. I think they're both going to be solid plays this week if one of them gets in the end zone. But obviously in the matchup versus Green Bay, they're going to get crushed in this one. So whoever has the most pass-catching upside, I think that wins. And I think based on last week, that guy was Michael Carter. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 30 wide receiver rankings for this week, click on this video right here.